It's a very nice day on the markets right now with many coins in the green. You can see Ethereum and a lot of the DeFi / ETH ecosystem related coins are performing extremely well today. And Bitcoin is also on the precipice of an all-time high breakout. So in today's video, we are going to discuss everything that you need to know to get ready for a massive week in crypto. I'm going to be talking through what I think happens next with Bitcoin and Ethereum. We're going to take a look at the charts. And I'm also going to explain why I believe there is a massive rotation that is currently underway out of one of the biggest ecosystems in crypto into two ecosystems. And this rotation, in my opinion, is going to open the door for many money-making opportunities. We're going to go through some of the exact altcoins that could be presenting opportunities later in today's video. So if you enjoy the daily crypto alpha, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And without further ado, let's get straight into the show here. Firstly, I want to touch on Bitcoin and just have a look at the technicals. Bitcoin right now technically is in a range, right? So you have the range high at 110, you have your range low at $101,000, and then you have the mid-range level, which currently has confluence with the money noodle and the mid-range of the RSI, which is at around 106.5K. Look, this is how I feel about Bitcoin. I think we may need to consolidate for a little bit before we attempt an all-time high breakout. There is this very key level in here in this pocket between 106.5 and 107. You see this gap, which is highlighted here, which Doc also highlighted on his Discord post. He said he doesn't know if Bitcoin is going to give us pullback entries, but if it does, this is the blue box that we would jump on. So I want to just highlight this. If we do get a pullback into this zone, that would be the zone that I'm looking at to buy Bitcoin and to buy altcoins. Then what I would do is I would keep those positions open unless we break below the mid-range. And on a break of the noodle and this mid-range zone here, which is about 105 to 106, if we start closing below that on the 4 hourly and daily, then I would look to cut longs because the likelihood of a range low tap is going to be much higher in that scenario. And if we do come down to range low again, because we've had now 3 all-time high failed attempts, if that plays out, then it's going to take a lot longer for Bitcoin to recover. But there's nothing to worry about just yet because we still do have this very important zone around the 107K region, which is also, in my opinion, a great bidding zone for Bitcoin and alts. Look, we may not be lucky enough to get it, but we're only talking about 1.5K here, so I just want to highlight that. The other thing that I want to highlight is that you just have to remember that Bitcoin technically is into range high resistance here. So although a lot of altcoins look great and Ethereum looks great, and we're going to get into some of those opportunities later in the video, you do have to be aware that Bitcoin technically is at a point where it could pull back, as range high and resistance is still range high and resistance until proven otherwise. I fully believe we are going to get the breakout at some point. I think equities are going to go a lot higher at some point this year. I think Bitcoin will also follow suit and go a lot higher, and thus altcoins will also follow suit and go a lot higher. But we do have to be patient, and you don't want to be taking on a crazy amount of risk into range high. Always best to buy dips in the market. We spoke about the 100K dip that we did end up getting just a few days ago, and those are your opportunities to get some nice fills on altcoins. In addition to that, as long as Bitcoin remains constructive in terms of its price action, it opens the door for a lot of on-chain trading opportunities, and that's something we're going to discuss later in the video, how the increased sentiment across the market can open the door for you to make money in the short term that doesn't rely on holding. Because when we talk about investing or spot positions, we're looking for pullbacks, we're looking to bid and buy fear. But when we're talking about taking advantage of the market, well, you can do that as long as conditions are okay, and that opens the door to many insane trades on chain. Over the past 24 hours, I've had multiple messages from friends and colleagues in the space where, they would mention a coin to me. I'd wake up in the morning and the coin had already 2 to 3x. To be honest, I'm kind of getting a little bit sick of it. I might just have to start aping everything everyone sends me because it just seems like they always go up. But that's indicative of an on-chain season where people just front run really quick. And it's indicative of the fact that, people want to make money right now. They have enough of a risk-on attitude, to want to look for those opportunities. So we're going to discuss that in a little bit more depth later in the video. If you haven't watched the stream I did with Paradise, I recommend doing so if you want more of a technical look at Bitcoin. I gave you the rough scenarios, but he's going to go into a lot more depth in terms of the exact bid zones, all the technicals, and I'm doing 1 to 2 streams with him per week on the channel to give you a bit more of an insight into the market from a technical perspective. To recap one of his latest market updates, he said, more of you have been asking about order flow on stream, so I'll give some examples moving forward. Price swept 110k as open interest dropped. Shorts were positioning into the level and forced out on the break. Liquidation spikes confirmed they were offside. We also saw funding briefly flip negative on the run up to that level. A proper breakout needs rising open interest and positive delta. Here, open interest unwinds while delta stays bid. This looks way more like a squeeze than initiative buying. No reason to chase longs here. Pullback zones mentioned, as I discussed before, are worth longing. And if we do look at the open interest, it has upticked over the past couple of weeks. So this is a positive sign. But as I said, I think Bitcoin just needs to compress a little bit into this zone. Potentially can come down and sweep before a reattempt of all-time highs. But it is coming at some point soon. And of course, if you are really looking to position in terms of investing, there are kind of two scenarios. You can wait for the pullback, bid the pullback, or you can wait for a close confirm above, and then you can bid that. Of course, it can run up aggressively, but what you have to remember is if Bitcoin makes all-time highs, many of the altcoin market is still going to be lagging at that point, and you'll just see a lot of catch-up trades across the board. So there's no reason to risk it for the biscuit. If you are a patient person, you can just wait and see if Bitcoin closes above, and if it does, then you can start positioning in lagging altcoins that still have strong narratives, because what will happen is the whole market will kind of pick up, and you'll kind of get rotational bidding across the market because of Bitcoin's strength. And once it runs into price discovery, that's when I think things are going to get really crazy for alts. Byzantine highlights open interest on Ethereum as well has been increasing. Prices at range high, funding rates are muted. Shorts are about to have a really bad time, it seems. And I would agree, ETH looks fantastic. I mean, if you look at the weekly right now, off this diagonal trend line, you had a nice bounce. There's also confluence with the weekly money noodle. We're seeing a breakout to the upper range of that. If you go into ETH BTC, this is the really interesting chart. This is honestly some of the most constructive price action that we've seen on ETH BTC since November 2024. Obviously, when we had the last mini alt season. You can see here that Ethereum is grinding against the money noodle, but also against resistance in the form of this diagonal trend line, technically lower highs, but definitely starting to compress into this zone. And to me, this compression looks like a balance of probabilities. We will see another leg to the upside on Ethereum, and another leg to the upside could take us to this 0.03 region. And that would, in my opinion, be very, very good for the ETH ecosystem. So I'm going to make a big call today. I think over the coming months, ETH continues to outperform Bitcoin. I mean, I know Bitcoin's been on a huge run, but Ethereum has lagged behind for the longest time. I think now is finally the time where ETH actually makes a serious push up versus Bitcoin. This looks like a reversal that has a little bit more juice in the tank, at least to that 0.3 region, which is also the money noodle region on the weekly. So obviously, in that case, we would likely see a lot of the ETH betas do well. I'm going to discuss some in a minute here and recap my ETH beta list. But that's definitely the ecosystem that I think is going to have a lot of the on-chain opportunities right now. Ethereum L2s, we're going to discuss what I'm seeing on Base later and some of my top picks in the Base ecosystem. That is where I think capital is flowing right now. I think controversially, that Solana's momentum on-chain and in terms of the token itself is stalled out for the time being. That's something I discussed on last week's show. I got some hate on that video, but no hate against Sol. Still hold it long term. I just think if you look at the data, ETH is the stronger play right now. And you have to be in the strongest asset at all times, right? So that's why I made a bit of a rotation there. And Sol ETH, in my opinion, looks like it wants to keep breaking down. You can see the Sol ETH chart here. It had an impulse upwards, but it's only retraced that today. So looking quite bad, which is, a bullish thing for ETH overall. Looking at the Discord here, Paradise did a post in his Market Outlook channel saying plenty of breakout potential building across ETH beta soon. Already some have started to move. Last week's consolidations looked promising, but lacked key ingredients, liquidity sweeps, and proper trend retests/resets. That is now starting to shift, and you see Aave starting to have a breakout, Maker starting to have a breakout, Eigenlayer about to break out, SSV about to break out, ETHFi about to break out. So all of these ETH plays are starting to look very, very strong. Paradise says ETH beta/DeFi should be some of the strongest runners in the New York session if this momentum carries into it, which has just recently opened, and that's what we've seen so far. I like this post here, which says, for years, DeFi was beaten down, threatened, prosecuted, and witch hunted. Protocols were afraid to hire US devs and incorporate in the US for fear of reprisal. Now the SEC issues a statement they are going to endorse blockchain apps and support DeFi. My brothers, we haven't even begun to reprice this. Hold on to your butts. And basically, it's alluding to the SEC chair, Paul Atkins, which announced that DeFi platforms will be exempt from regulatory restrictions. He's also stated the right to have self-custody of one's private property is a foundational American value that should not disappear when one logs onto the internet. So a complete 180 from the Gensler administration, which is obviously boding well for DeFi and Ethereum on the regulatory front. And then you combine that with, the ETH staking ETF, the passive bid that we are seeing for ETH, and some of the technicals that we're seeing on ETH, and I think it builds the narrative in general for ETH and ETH DeFi. And this is something that I highlighted last week, 4 days ago, and I was saying these are some of the top altcoins that I'd be wanting to hold through summer. And just to recap some of the plays, they're already up quite nicely over the last 4 days. I think I mentioned Pendle at $4. It's pushing into $4.50 now. I mentioned MakerDAO as well. That's just broken out. ENA finally started to move. Still hasn't done much in the context of things. That's the level you want to look at, the 0.41 level. Syrup is looking good. You have a breakout trade, which is currently on the table, a 4-hour close above this level, and I'd probably look to play some price discovery with a stop below 42. So not a whole lot of leverage on a minus 7% stop gap. So probably I'll have to go like 3 to 5x, but this is a potential breakout trade. I got one fill on the sweep of the 3.7 region that I pointed out a few days ago. It was somewhere here in this video. And also charted it with Paradise, so that's looking good. And then some of the other ETH proxies that I mentioned are looking great, like Aave. So yeah, we were spot on in terms of the narrative. I was spot on in terms of the Solana ETH rotation 6 days ago and then 4 days ago with this video as well. So do make sure you're subscribed to stay up to date with these things, because yeah, I am spotting some rotations continuing to take place, and there are two ecosystems specifically that I'm going to mention in a couple of minutes here. Another one that I want you to keep your eye out from a breakout trade perspective is Pepe. Pepe looks really good right now, and I think a close above this level could lead to a breakout. Just keep in mind, right, whenever you're trading altcoins, you have to have a framework that also takes place in context of where Bitcoin is. So if you accept that Bitcoin is, closer to range high, just accept that if we do get a pullback down into this zone, you want confluence to line up on your chart. So when it comes to breakout trading, you have to make sure it's low time frame stuff, not spot bidding. I would spot bid on a pullback, and I would breakout trade in isolation, and I would be mostly focusing on the lower time frames and really looking at the respective altcoin chart of your choice if you are trading these breakouts. Look, in bullish momentum environments, and clearly we're getting one for ETH right now, these setups can look really, really good and present good opportunities, but you still have to be cognizant of where Bitcoin is at all times, because you don't want to load into a bunch of spot and then get washed out. Overall, to kind of recap the sentiment in the market right now, it's definitely better, at least on X, than it was on the weekend. Intern here says state of the market. ICOs are back. Obviously, we saw the plasma thing. I'm going to touch on that at the end of the video. Apps generating revenue. I think that's alluding to Launchcoin, Hyperliquid. Circle IPO going parabolic. Bitcoin tapping all-time highs. Stablecoin growth with no end in sight. Obviously, that's a really strong narrative right now. I think stablecoins just recently hit $250 billion in total market cap, which is absolutely insane, and Bitcoin accumulation vehicles popping up left and right. I think Saylor bought another $1 billion worth of Bitcoin, so he just keeps aping, we're winning. And I definitely think that the stage is well set for crypto at the moment. I just think you still need to be a little bit wary. I don't want to be one of those classic bull posters that says, yes, everything's going to rocket. Look, do I have a bullish bias? Do I think we're going to make new highs? Absolutely. But you do have to realize, and this is something I touched on a couple of days ago in my video that I did on alt season, like this is a fundamentally different market to what it used to be. And I think a lot of the opportunities now are in the narrative trades, are in the rotations, and that's something that I cover a lot on the channel these days, and less in holding big portfolios of bloated altcoins, because with the amount of dilution and dispersion across the altcoin market, and because retail just isn't as trusting as it was back in 2021 because of all the rubbish that's happened in the space, I don't think you're going to see that really sector-wide alt season, but you'll definitely see pockets of outperformance, especially across the hot sectors. Right now, that's obviously ETH, DeFi, and I think that can continue. A couple others, which I'm going to talk about later today, but you don't want to be holding too many altcoins. You want to be holding maybe 5 to 10 core positions and then trading with the rest of your capital, and that's something that that I do. I kind of just make these disseminations between, are we in a risk on season? Are we in a risk off season? If we're in a risk on season, I have more of a propensity to actually play these on-chain games and trade. And if we're in a risk off season, then I'm doing a bit less of that. And I'm just, condensing my portfolio down into more of a core portfolio. And that's basically my strategy in the market. But now I want to get into the meat of the video, the section that I think is really, really important here, and that is really understanding where the current market dynamics are. So what I'm noticing is that whenever the market seems to pump, especially Ethereum, so whenever risk appetite begins to return, as we just discussed, it has returned somewhat. What I'm noticing is on-chain alts are the altcoins that are undergoing the most violent rotations in the market. So Base is an ecosystem that we'll discuss soon, but it's had many, many huge runners in recent days, whilst most centralized exchange alts are still lagging behind. So yes, of course, ETH and ETH ecosystem proxies and betas have been doing really well. But overall, I mean, a lot of the major caps haven't moved massively. They might be up 5 to 10%, but they're not getting massive pumps because of the dispersion aspect that I discussed before. However, when these risk-on periods come, there are lots of on-chain opportunities. And I would go so far as to say that getting good at taking advantage of on-chain opportunities and fundamental research is probably more of an important skill than perps trading in this market. Now, that might be slightly controversial because perps trading is so popular, and I perps trade, and we have many people in the Discord that perps trade. Definitely not a bad skill to have, but I do recommend that in general, people nail the fundamentals before they nail the technicals, because if you can manage your emotions whilst investing, managing spot positions, looking at trends, understanding speed/info asymmetry in the market, and other important concepts behind really strong fundamental investing and trading, then you're going to become a much better technical investor. So, if I were to jump into being a full-time perps trader, I'd be in a much better position versus someone that just learnt TA, because I could use my fundamental analysis to spot hot sectors and coins and use that to help me get a leg up or an advantage when it comes to my technical trading. So I do recommend that if you're going to niche down, and I think niching down in crypto is so important, that right now people actually niche down more into the on-chain side of things, because I think that's where a lot of the opportunities are. I mean, if I look at my best trades, right, pound for pound, yes, I get to compound a bit of wealth through centralized exchange trading and perps trading. Most of my big trades over the past few weeks have happened on chain. I mean, the launch coin thing was absolutely massive. Over the past few days, I've been degenning a little bit into some of these Base ecosystem, Avalanche ecosystem. We're going to discuss some coins today. Like this kind of stuff is where the opportunities are. And my friend sent me a meme coin last night. It already 3x'd overnight, which I'm going to reveal what meme coin that is slightly later in this video, because I still think it can go up, actually. I'm a bit annoyed I missed that initial entry, but these are the things that are pumping massively whenever the market comes back, and I think this is where you can develop a really solid edge. Now, to understand and develop an edge in on-chain, firstly, you need to understand where money's flowing, and what you can clearly see is money's flowing out of Solana. I mean, this on the left, you have the Solana outflow side, and then you have the inflow side on the right, and you can see, the left side's much bigger than the right side, which indicates that there are more outflows than inflows, and for Ethereum, it's the converse. The left side is smaller than the right side, which indicates that more capital is flowing to Ethereum. What you're seeing is that Arbitrum, due to Hyperliquid, Ethereum, and Base are the biggest beneficiaries right now. Even in the last 24 hours, you've seen Avax receive a lot of flows on a relative basis. So these are the current ecosystems which are garnering a lot of attention, and no doubt it's the Ethereum and ETH EVM ecosystems right now which are hot, and that's because you have a Sol ETH breakdown. You've had a bit of a rotation out of Solana and a bit more of a focus on utility and real yield and stablecoins and DeFi, which has prompted a little bit of an ETH season. So what I would be looking at is I would be focusing on a couple of ecos right now. The first eco that I would really be focusing on is Base. It just continues to skyrocket in terms of volume and TVL. Look, TVL recently hitting over 5 billion, which is absolutely insane. DEX volume at some points was over 2 billion. I think right now it's around $1 billion. So that's a massive ecosystem. Now, obviously, you've got Airdrop and Brett, some of those memes, but you've had big runners recently like Kita, KTA. Now, I saw this was fudded a little bit recently for, not having tech or whatever. Now, I actually missed the initial run-up on this, even though I found out about it at like 40 cents. I didn't buy. I'm quite annoyed that I didn't do that, but you had a meaningful pullback because of some of this FUD, and purely as a technical trader, right? Not even really aligning with the fundamentals, which I think is strong because the community is so strong. Even if the tech isn't what they say it is, or whatever like that FOB was about. What I look at is I look at the community, and I look at the fact it's a leading proxy on Base, and I look at the fact that it's still not on all the major exchanges, and there are big creators pushing it. So I still think it has upside, and it actually wicked into this key pocket here, which is my bid zone. So if you can get another fill closer to 1.15, that is a nice area in my opinion, considering the RSI is also resetting. It's that bottom of the money noodle, which is currently being defended. And if you want to go into the daily, you could see this is the pattern that's forming. Reaccumulation in this zone, in my opinion, would be a nice zone to actually load up before a potential retest of highs. And the good thing is, you've got this wick here that you can invalidate at around $1. So yeah, it kind of limits you not being able to do leverage, but you have a 17% stop gap as an out. So just for some mathematical context, if you put 10K, you could get stopped out for 8.3K if you wanted to take the bet here, and you've got 2 to 3x upside. So there's asymmetry on the trade. Whenever you enter a trade, you want to make sure there is asymmetry to the upside. So as a leader, I'd look into things like KTA on Base. I also put together a little bit of a short list here. You have Airdrop, which is also a coin on Base. This is the leading DEX. This seems to be the leading proxy whenever Base starts to heat up. If we look at the arrow chart right now on Coinbase, you can see that it's also had a big spike and actually flipped the money noodle on the daily. I want to highlight the weekly level that it's currently heading into. It does have a little bit of work to do to get up to the previous resistance zones, or the previous support zones, now flipped into resistance. Just on the daily though, it does have a nice money noodle flip. So there might be a bit of juice to squeeze out on this move, which is 9%, but maybe if you want to take a bit more conservative approach, you'll either wait for another sweep of the lows if we get it, or conversely, you would wait for some consolidation above 67 cents, just because although fundamentally it's strong, technically it has a little bit of work to do to recover. Kaito's also on Base. I don't think it's an exact proxy because it's also on a lot of major exchanges, and I think that's where the majority of volume's happening. But I do like the fact that it was basically tagging the money noodle on the run up. Then you saw it flip bearish for a little bit, and then now it's basically flipped again, and it's actually compressing into the bottom whilst forming a flag on the lower time frames. Like, I'll show you what this looks like. Very similar to that ETH trade before. It also looks good on the 1 hour money noodle. It also had a reclaim there, so there's confluence across multiple time frames. So I do like this one as a trade. I think, as I said, I'm doing a lot of on-chain trading, not just perp stuff at the moment, and I like this flip to potentially take us back to $2. So that's one that I look at. Cookie also looks quite good from a technical perspective. I think Paradise highlighted it on the show this morning. These are the two AI coins. This also recently flipped the noodle, and you have some constructive PA now happening with a potential flip of this previous support level turned resistance. What I do like though is that since flipping the noodle again, we've pretty much held every time you see a major pullback. So even if you want to delete these lines here just to make it a little bit more simple for you, you can just basically bid the noodle on the daily. You have a nice RSI reset. I think this can push back to the upside as well. We're seeing a lot of projects now want to market with these social engagement campaigns. So there's a lot of demand, I think, coming in for Cookie and Kaito in terms of their services and also their products on the technical on the user side, for you to actually be able to access their dashboards, especially Cookie, where there's like a token gate on it. There are some mid-risk as well. We talked about KTA. There's also Tibber, which is a stealth AI project. I don't own any of this, but it was on my research list, so I thought I'd mention it. I don't own any of these either, but you can look into Geyser, Noise, and Aeon. These are AI/base plays to look into. Just do some research into them. They aren't, once again, I don't own them, but you can look into them, and I think the Base ecosystem is one definitely to take a look at the moment. I do own some virtuals. Let's just do a quick scan of virtuals because that's also on Base. Virtual here. Let's look at the Binance one. It actually looks quite good if you look at the chart here. You've had I want to go into the 8 hour just to see how it's progressing. But yeah, you've also had a money noodle flip. You've had a SR flip as well, as you can see on this level here. And this is looking really good as well for a potential range high retest. So yeah, it's doing quite well. I think the Virtuals ecosystem is actually home to a lot of runners. Like on Virtual Genesis, I've seen lots of these coins explode. So that's another ecosystem to just spend some time looking at on chain. So that's the base ecosystem. So that's one area where I'm seeing capital rotate. Another thing that I'm seeing over the last couple of days, especially the weekend, is the Avax ecosystem starting to catch up. And I've seen some capital being bridged over there. I've also seen some big runners on Avax. So you've got Lambo, which pumped massively. You've had Arena, which pumped massively. That's like their pump fund equivalent. How would you describe it? Yeah, I guess it's a pump fund equivalent. They call themselves a next gen social fi app, but it's kind of like the launch coin, pump fund, launch pad of Avax. I still think Arena, by the way, can do quite well. I saw Ansem shilling it. It did pump to 0.026, so 260 million. Now it's back down to 197. This could be forming a nice base. If you want to just have a bit of a technical basis to trade this on, you could look at this zone here, which we're currently seeing a retest of. It's very hard to do TA on coins like this because they aren't on major sexes, so they don't really respect trend, but you'd purely use this as a risk management device. So a bit of accumulation here and, setting a stop below just for some sort of invalidation, even though it's not going to play perfectly off the technicals, could be a prudent thing to do. But I do like this if Avax keeps running as a potential play. That could definitely have more upside if the narrative continues to pick up. Obviously, a lot of this relies, though, on the overall sentiment of the market going up. So a lot of these for me are trades, right? I'm not saying ape into spot, add all these to your core portfolios. I'm mostly presenting opportunities for you to be able to make some money as long as, the music's playing. I think that is a key skill that you need in crypto at the moment, the ability to, execute quick flips, make money, and navigate the short term as well as the long term. Look, if you can't do that, then just stay in the long-term game. But I play the short-term game a lot, and, I want to be authentic with my audience and share coins that I'm actually looking at in the short term and things that I'm positioning in the short term. I said earlier, so that's the Avax ecosystem, and that's one where I'd definitely be looking at. I said earlier that I'd mentioned the token that my friend shilled me last night that pumped massively, and it was Unipix, Bonk Guy's coin, and it's useless. So I don't really get the meme fully, but apparently it's just useless coin. Apparently some of the Bonk people are, either affiliated or behind it or supporting it in some capacity. And I know Bonk Guy has kind of taken this under his wing and has started to relentlessly shill it. I think it went up to 50 million. It dropped down to 40. I entered a little bit today just to get some exposure to it. I first got shielded at 12 mil and then at 3x, straight overnight. And by the time I saw it, it was too late. But yeah, this is just an interesting one for you guys to look into. You can see his thesis there. If the idea is good, it'll send hard eventually, regardless of the presence. If the idea is bad, it won't send. I didn't get into useless until days after it launched because it took a while for me to understand just how brilliant of a meme it is. Then I kept seeing very savvy trenches and meme coin guys in practically every alpha group of me consistently talk about how it's a pretty brilliant meme and how they're confident it sends to billions in market cap. So yeah, I don't know. He also got a bit of hate for whatever reason, but I don't know too much about that. All I know is that this is a bit of a narrative that's cropping up, and I added a small bag just for fun though, because this is like a risky coin, but Bonk Guy is behind it. He has quite a big presence, and I've also been shielded from a few people now, so yeah, you can check that out. And I was going to go into Fabian's stablecoin farming, but now in the context of what I've talked about, maybe it seems a little bit boring now, but because the plasma deposit just happened, if you weren't able to take advantage of that, Fabian has, you could pause the video, a delta neutral strategy for farming the Hyperliquid airdrop. So if you're in the Mars High Club, you'll get access to all this sort of stuff where our best analysts share their strategies on the market and give you the ability to earn opportunities, not just in terms of altcoin trading, but also passive opportunities for airdrop farming and stablecoin farming. So if you've got some passive stables, this is actually quite a good strategy where he's shorting Hyperliquid to maintain delta neutrality versus market directionality, and then he is looping to earn money on his stablecoins north of 20% APY if you adjust for the potential airdrop, with the possibility of going a lot higher. So yeah, that is today's video. I want to wrap it up here to keep it under 30 minutes. It's on-chain season. Do what you will with that information. Hopefully some of the coins and setups that I mentioned today are constructive for you. Some feedback that I have is, actually have a watch list for this stuff, and you can use even ChatGPT to keep track of it. But don't just watch these videos passively and hear these coins and then go on about your day. Make a list, and do this for every YouTuber or X person you follow. Make a list of these coins. You can do it on ChatGPT. You can do it on a real notepad. And just add them to your watch list if you like them. If you don't, discard them. But there are probably at least 2 or 3 like very valid setups in today's video. And if you can combine that with technicals, there are opportunities for you to make money. It's all about organization and actually putting yourself in the right position to benefit from the alpha that I share in these videos. I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Hopefully you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.